Good evening, folks, and welcome to the YouTube Model Builders presentation tonight, the MRR Tech Show. I'm your host, Barry, and unfortunately, Mike won't be here till maybe later because, well, he got stuck with bad weather in the train getting home from the city, so he might not be home till about 11 o'clock. So we'll see if he actually gets here. So I'm just going to set up some stuff for sharing here, folks. So tonight, like I said, it's the MRR Tech Show. Our topic will be doing speaker enclosures on locomotives. I'm going to have a little demonstration of how I did a speaker enclosure on a Bachmann 3-truck Shay, and just give you some suggestions on different speakers, etc., and show you what I can about it. So let me go to the next slide here. And just remember, for YouTube Model Builders is your source for free model railroad resources. We have our free online e-mag, which you can subscribe to be notified whenever it's published. We have our live chat and presentations on Tuesdays and Thursdays with Dude Lindler and Troy Zamas. And then we have the Gino Show, coming up with his structure show, and then me and Mike doing our Model Railroad Tech Show. And then every month we have the YouTube Model Builders Live event, so be sure to check us out. And also, still got time yet to join on in. We have the YouTube Model Builders Big Build Contest hosted by IMRRO.com, our friend Eric. So you build a big model railroad structure and put your build on YouTube. And you can be eligible to win some of our great prizes. And for more information, go to YouTubeModelBuilders.com and click on the link for the Big Build Contest. Basically, you have to build your structure for your model railroad and produce 3 videos for the instructions there, and then publish it and then post it so we can see it. And then we'll put it into judging in the fall. All right. First, here's a slide of a very simple locomotive install. That what you see there is a plastic enclosure that's been created by an oval speaker, and this is designed to point up pretty much through the grills and say a locomotive. This looks like it might be a GP or an SD style locomotive. Could be a U-boat even. It is hard to tell like this, but that's a very basic installation of a speaker. You can put it in a sealed box, mount it onto your frame like that, and have it point out through an opening. I'm going to give you some examples of different kinds of speakers here. What you see here are some sugar cube speakers, otherwise known as portable media device speakers. And in the background you can see an enclosure. They look like they're designed to be configured in an isobaric configuration where the speakers work with each other to enhance the sound quality, get you more volume out there. And here's becoming a common installation technique for steam engines is to put a small round speaker in the boiler so that the enclosure essentially becomes the back of the boiler, and the boiler front encloses the sound so it goes up the stack where the exhaust notes of a steam locomotive really should come from the front. And here's another typical enclosure. This is a 28mm soundtrack speaker, I believe, in an enclosure here. So just a simple pre-made enclosure that you can buy anywhere and mount to the right size speaker, and they make them for smaller ones as well. So there's 2 methods of wiring your speakers. With multiple speakers, you always have to be careful about what your final impedance to. Most people, it's measured the same way you would measure a resistor in ohms, but impedance is calculated differently. But it is read as ohms. So when you wire speakers in series and you make a daisy chain, it'll add their impedances or resistances together. So these are each 8 ohm speakers. You'll get 8 plus 8 is 16. So here you have your one lead going to your negative lead, and your positive to your negative to your positive, back to the decoder. This way the speakers work in unison, because otherwise they would fight against each other. And here's how you would wire them in parallel, positive to positive, negative to negative. But when you do that, it cuts your impedance in half, so 2 8-ohm speakers becomes 4 ohms. So you always have to be conscious of this when planning multiple speaker installations, because it will affect how your decoder operates. If the decoder is designed for 8 ohms, it may or may not work with 4 ohms. Typically what that'll cause the amplifier to do is overdrive and overheat and maybe even burn out, because the less resistance makes more power generation go through the load. It's almost looking closer to a dead short, so it makes the amplifier work harder. Whereas with 2 speakers in this configuration, you will have a lower volume output, but you may get overall more sound because you have more speaker area. So that's something to always consider. If you have room for more speakers, the more surface area of your speaker, the more cone surface area, the better off you are. So we're back to our beginning here, so we'll just minimize that and stop our sharing. So I'm going to switch over to my desk camera and I'll show you what I got on the bench here. Here we go. So let me tilt that camera down a little bit more. So there's another Bachman 3 Trichet I'm working on for my friend Dick Angus. Basically what we have here is the coal load from the tender. It's made of cast metal. So what I ended up doing is taking a hacksaw and cutting the back of the weight out, and then I also cut a notch in the front here, which is where the sound will come out. Now before, I made a small enclosure like this, mounted it inside. You know, it's basically I caulk it in place. I had one of these little sugar cube speakers. The one thing to beware when you buy these is a lot of them are only about half a watt. Most sound decoders are only a 1 watt amplifier, so they can overdrive these unless you keep your volume down. So your best bet is to be mindful that you really should have a 1 watt speaker. So what I bought here was a Soundtrax. It's a 14 by 25.5 millimeter speaker. So I'm going to mount it in this way here. Oops, grab that again. So the magnet faces up like that, and I'll build an enclosure around it so the sound will come out from here out the slot, and it'll be sealed in the back here. So that's the project for tonight. So does anybody have any questions so far?
Hey Barry, part of it getting cut off at the top when you're showing.
Okay, I'll keep an eye on that.
I know you have a very small window of presentation there.
Yeah, let me tilt the camera up somewhere my hands are more. There we go. Some other different kinds of speakers I can show you here are.
I've got a question for you, Barry.
What's that?
If you have a decoder that'll run an 8-ohm speaker, and if you hook 2 8-ohm speakers in parallel, I guess, right? That's where you get 16 ohms.
Well, that would be in series to do 16 ohms.
Series, then
yeah.
Your decoder wouldn't drive that, would it?
Yeah, it will. Yeah, what it does is it lowers the volume because it's got to fight. It's got more resistance, so it lowers the output of the speaker. What happens is if you put them in parallel impedances get cut by the number of speakers. So 3 is divided by 3, 2 be divided by 2. So your impedance lowers. So what happens then is that you overdrive the amplifier, because now, you know, if you take an 8 ohm and put two together, you get 4 ohms. That's half the resistance. You know, you're getting closer and closer to a short in the circuit. So therefore, it makes the amplifier output much more current, and it can overheat the amplifier, overdrive it, etc. Or, you know,
So by
burn
hooking
out.
them in series, you double the impedance, right? You're doubling the ohms of the speakers.
Yes.
And if
Yeah,
you
that
add a third one and a fourth one, I mean, just hypothetical, wouldn't that be too much for the decoder to
well,
drive?
it actually lowers the wattage output of the amplifier, because the amplifier can't output as much um, as it needs to, or should anyway, because of the resistance. So overall it limits how much power it can put out, and in turn that causes lower volume. That's the only drawback to doing any multiple speaker installation, is that, you know, either way, either you lose volume or you get more volume and surface area by lowering your impedance, but you risk burning out your amplifier, because it's, like I said, the lower the impedance, the closer to a dead short the circuit looks like. Therefore, the amplifier can just output much more current when you drive it, you know.
Right.
So Barry, that risk is in parallel connection.
Only in parallel. In series,
There you
basically,
just sort
the
of
more resistance you put in, you're just preventing the decoder from producing sound. You're not overheating it, overdrawing it. You're making it. It sounds kind of funny. I mean, you're actually making it harder, so it can't output as much power. So that's why they're all mostly optimized for 8 ohms. I mean, Digitrax used to have some stuff that was optimized for 32 ohms. I don't know if their new line is, but some of the European stuff has used 100 ohm speakers, which is very hard to find. But that makes, you know, all the difference in the world, having the right speaker.
The more speakers in series, the more power you need to drive them.
Barry, do the decoders tell in their instructions how to connect the speakers in series or parallel? What's preferred for that decoder?
Not really, because I mean their preference is you use one speaker. You know, they're designed for an 8 ohm load, which you can do if you want to do 4 speakers. You do 2 in series, which are then in parallel, and you get 8 ohms still. Because if you put the 2 in series, will give you 16 in each circuit. Then if you put that in parallel to the decoder, now if you got 16 and 16 is cut in half, you're back to 8, but without overdriving the amplifier. I mean, it does sound funny, like I said, that, you know, the more resistance you give it in ohms, the speaker, I mean, the amplifier will not work harder unless you jack the volume way up to try and overcompensate, which, of course, anytime you do that, you risk over amplifying it, blowing up the amp, you know, frying. I mean, I thought I fried one of these little speakers when I found out they were only half watt, but they survive pretty good. It just breaks the sound up and they stop working. Now, what I have here is a new TCS 28 millimeter speaker. It's a Mylar cone type speaker, whereas compared to this one, it's a more traditional type cone. But they're both, I mean, open to the rear. You see the slots here that let the sound out the back of the speaker. You see there's a foam piece here that lets sound out the back. What's different about the portable media device and sugar cube speakers is they have a solid back, and the front is actually the transducer element. So what happens is this vibrates, produces the sound, and you can actually take and mount this right up against the shell of a locomotive with double-faced tape, and it acoustically can couple the sound to the shell, so the shell can actually produce some of the sounds you hear. And these are nice and small. You put these, you know, together. I would put these in series and parallel, because you can fit like 4 of these in a locomotive, and that way you'll get your 8 ohms. But now you have each speaker sharing the load, so you don't have, you know, a watt of power going through each speaker. Now TCS and other manufacturers make round speakers like this size. Other ones are more designed like this. There's the heavier duty magnet for the high bass speakers, etc. So there's a lot of different designs you can get. And you can basically find the one that fits your situation. I mean, like this could fit in the back of the floor of that tender, like that. But I have barely enough room to fit the decoder and a keep alive circuit in here. So I chose to use the other route of putting it up in the cold bunker. It took a lot of thought to figure out what I wanted to do and would it or wouldn't it work. But it seems to have worked. I mean, my friend Dick is very happy with the first one I've done for him, so I'm doing the same thing again for this one. So we'll get started here. Now what I need to do is come up with a closure, so I just use a simple piece. This is like 40,000 styrene, and I just need to make sure I have enough room here, like this. So you can see I have barely enough room in there to get that to fit in there. So what I'm going to do is make the enclosure so it sits around the rim rather than going like this, okay, on the side. I'm going to make the speaker sit on top of the enclosure, because there's a little tiny lip around the outside of the speaker. Hard to tell, but you can see there's a little lip around there that I can rest this on. You know, one thing, since I filed this, I had to really make sure this thing was clean so it doesn't get metal filings on the magnet of the speaker. So let me see here. I don't know what to do. Maybe I can do that. Let's see. A lot of times you got to do this stuff like a dry fit. If you don't think it's going to fit, you just file it some more, and then that way it should fit. See here, this is a little tight. So what I want to do is make sure the speaker has enough room, and I'll put a little cover over the front here so you can't get sound out the backside of the speaker. That's one thing that has to be abundantly clear to people doing speaker installations. The whole goal is to get the sound coming from here and keep it away from the sound coming from out here. Because the shorter this path, the more likely that sound will cancel it out. Like if you take the speaker, wire it up on a decoder, just play it like this, barely hear it. You do something as simple as this, so that the sound is separated and has to go this long. What happens then is that you know, it goes ahead and takes a longer path, therefore arrives out of phase, and the sound will not cancel itself. That's the trick. Is if this is going out or this is going in, the air can't move very much in this short distance. But if you make it longer, acoustically, it lets the speaker put out much more sound. And having an enclosure on the back, the bigger the enclosure, usually the better, because that adds to the acoustical coupling of the sound.
Can you use like a rubber O-ring or something to enclose it with?
Well, a rubber O-ring might not be a bad idea, Dave. But the biggest thing is you want to have some kind of enclosure space behind it. What I would say, I'm going to use this as an example, even though it's a poor one. You see, a locomotive that say has a grill like this that's open. You could put an O-ring right around the grill and put the speaker up against it facing up, okay? So the sound comes out about here. And then the sound will also come out the bottom around the truck, but see, it's got this long path to go from up in here all the way around the trucks and back up to the top. so it won't cancel itself out. But if these were open and you did that, now the sound can come right out here and go right back in there. Therefore, you'd have much less volume now because you really have no enclosure. So if these were open, your best bet would be to seal them from behind, and then let it come out the grill. It all depends if you actually have open grills. If you don't have open grills, what you do is you go inside here, you build a little ledge, okay. So you just a little piece of plastic out and then down. You mount your speaker through it so the magnet's facing down or up, really doesn't matter. And then that way the sound can go out through the grill at the top, or if that's closed, you want it to come down through the truck. It's all about getting the sound out. You want a path for the sound to escape from where it's at. So if you have something with a big solid metal object where there's no path around the truck there for the sound to get down, you want to try and shoot it up out the top of the body. But if it's a more open design, like one of these old Atherns, a lot of times you can just build, like I said, you build a shelf like, let's see, like right here, and then up, and then mount your speaker so the magnet's up in here, and it shoots the sound down the truck and around the side, and that way the back of the speaker is prevented from reaching the front of the speaker with the sound. I mean, does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is if you got to get that path so they don't arrive, like I said, in phase, because that's when they go bump bump. They just work against each other, and that's what results in lower volume. And the bigger the enclosure will make the sound better. It aids in the bass of the that's being achieved. That's why if you buy like a good high bass speaker, a lot of times it comes with its own enclosure. So it's designed to fit that locomotive. So let's get back to here. And sometimes you can just use, like thinner material. So if you have to, let's see how far up I need to make this go. All right. There we go. Trusty dusty little scale from Hal Reynolds. Yes. Oh, that's perfect. Same exact speaker. All right, there's my little metal straight edge here. Oh, there you are. There we go. Right. And then we need to make an end piece. So make it the same height. Okay, sand it down some. That's better. Okay. Right now we have our end pieces, so we will mark them for width. Right. Yeah, you bugger. Now, one thing I do is I mount any of my enclosures using adhesive caulk. Helps give them a little bit of flexibility when you mount them. All right, let's see how that looks. Oh, there's the one end. So now what we'll do is we'll take our long side here, put it up on the speaker, just as a test fit, and see how it looks. There we go. It gives me just a little bit of room under the speaker so the sound can get out to the front. So I'm gonna get one of my little green goodies here.
What type of adhesive is that?
That is a Zap-A-Gap medium. It's just a CA. I just put a little on the end here. And line it up on my trusty dusty square. Wait till it sets. Yeah, sometimes I should go get myself some accelerant because it takes a little too long to dry sometimes. And if you end up with any little gaps in the enclosure, you can always fill them with caulk. And one thing I didn't mention, again, keeping the sound from the front and back meeting, fill those holes. Just a little dab of caulk is all it takes to keep the sound from sneaking out those four holes and contaminating your sound. All right. Let's hold it till she dries. All right, we'll give that a moment to set up before we go any further. So is there any other kind of questions you guys might have as far as speakers or anything like that?
I got a question.
What's that?
My Kato SD38-2,
Mm-hmm.
the speaker blew out of it.
Okay.
Except it's a used locomotive, so it's somebody else's locomotive had it before me.
Right.
I don't think it was the original speaker for that thing.
Do you know what kind of sound decoder it is? Is it a tsunami or a lock sound?
Well, I can't tell what decoder it was, except it works with the Digitrax.
Well, they all should work with Digitrax.
Yeah.
That's the trick. You
Yeah.
have to find out what kind of decoder it is to make sure you know how many ohms speaker you would need to replace it with. I mean, 8 ohms is usually a safe bet, unless it's like some weird version of a low sound where it might be 100 ohms.
Well, it's under plastic. I can't take it off.
Well, you'd have to remove the shell to get to it to start with.
It's on there pretty tight.
Well, a lot of times you have to remove the couplers and take screws out. Like I know with the one I was working on earlier tonight, I have to literally take the couplers, screws out, pull the couplers out of the pilot, okay? And then there were several screws underneath that I had to take out to get the shell off. Once I did that, then it was fine. Every one of them, sometimes you don't have any screws holding the shell other than the couplers, and then you have to, like along where the side toe is, pry it out a little bit, and it pops right off. I mean, everybody's slightly different.
Yeah. Well, the guy did a dumb thing because I couldn't get the original speakers out because I don't know what glue he used.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's tough to get it out of the shell.
Did he use like some kind of silicone rubber or something like that? Because people use that too.
Hmm.
It's a
Yes.
round speaker in there, right, Mark? I think it's round anyway, if I remember right. So you might have to cut around it with an X-Acto blade to cut the glue loose. I mean, if the speaker's fried, you don't care if you damage it, cut the cone or anything, but you got to get that speaker out somehow. So just try not to destroy the enclosure, because I think the Katos have a built-in speaker enclosure, correct?
Yeah.
Most do.
Suppose when I was looking in there, I know the speaker supposed to be in the fuel tank.
Okay.
So it was where the cooling fans are.
Hmm.
It's right in between in there. I can't get any tool or anything to get it unlodged.
I wonder why he put it up there. Well, I mean, if the
It
cooling
eats
fans are open, you can get sound out. You might hear it a little bit better than under the fuel tank, but I mean,
it eats me. I don't think he knew what he was doing.
it doesn't sound that way, to tell you the truth. All right, so what I'm going to do now is just put some super glue along the edge of the speaker here. And we're just going to put that puppy right on the enclosure like that. So there, I've got the speaker partially mounted in there. So I shouldn't have used this cardboard for my glue thing. I should have used a scrap piece of styrene. This thing's soaking up the glue. All right, that looks like it's good in there. Just gonna take the enclosure, sand it a little bit so it's level. So you can see it's not that difficult to do an enclosure like this. And you see I'm putting it cone down into the unit like that. Now it's just a little bit protruding past the back here, so what I'll have to do is seeing that slightly. But you see there's a little tiny, it's hard to see, there's a little gap between the speaker frame and this opening. So what I'll do is take one of these little brushes and put caulk in there. But first thing first, I want to gotta let my soldering iron heat up, and we'll solder speaker leads. I'll show you how to get them out of the enclosure too, because even that little hole where the wires come out, you want to caulk. You know, any sound to get out from front to back.
So I guess the idea is to have it totally hermetically sealed.
Yeah, pretty much, Shady, yes. Because it's weird, but even the littlest thing, like those holes where the speaker you could screw it down, can cause sound contamination. So you want to avoid that. So I'm going to let the iron heat up. Now, the problem with these portable media device speakers, I don't know if you can see it, but the contacts here stick up off the back. So sometimes you have a hard time mounting these up flush up against something, so you usually what I use is something like, you know, 3M, you know, foam mounting tape. And that way that also insulates the two leads here and here where the wires come off. So
Does the tape cause any absorption of sound? Because I think
well,
the idea is
with
transfer
these
that sound
here,
to resonate, right?
it helps it keep it from making the shell vibrate. So like I said,
Okay.
the back of it's a solid enclosure. So I mean you don't want to mount it rigidly. I mean sometimes people even use different speakers like this or even the one I'm using here, and they use like basswood or balsa wood because it can color how the sound sounds. Same with this, if you put this, if these contacts weren't there and you glued this right to the shell, it might make a much sharper sounding sound, maybe not as much bass, but it's going to make the shell part of the sound system because the vibrations from the speaker, because it's the transducer type, will be pushed into the shell, and the shell can vibrate, and if it's loose anywhere, you might hear vibration. So you want to make these with some kind of resilient mount like foam tape if you want to mount them right up against the shell, because you don't need an enclosure like that. You can put an enclosure to help isolate it from the shell and color how the sound is, you know, like the back. I mean, I know George over at TVW Miniature sells a lot of these, and so does Streamline Backshop Services, and they have different, like some are wood, some are plastic, but they have specialized enclosures that are designed for each one of these type of speakers. I mean, when I was at the Rochester NMRA event, I put in one of the bid, the bid table, and I put a bid in, and I won a double speaker set from Streamline Backshop Service, and there's a dual enclosure, and there's specific instructions on how to wire it and everything, because that way the speakers work in unison, so they're not fighting each other. There's different kinds of combinations of speaker designs, and I'm sure Bill's familiar with them, like isobaric and etc. So,
But I'm so confused about one thing here, Barry.
okay.
You're trying to make the shell part of the sound system, but yet I get the idea is not to have too many vibrations to the point where you're getting too much resonance off the shell.
Yeah, you
Somewhat
want to
muted.
you want to mute it. That's why you want to use like I prefer to use like a resilient mount, and very few people actually recommend you putting it right up against the shell.
So
You
you don't get that
can, but
brassy
like I
sound.
said, it's liable to play with the color of the sound.
Yeah. Interesting.
And just tinning my leads here. All right. Try to get so you can see it. This is going to be fun. I'm going to have to hold it this way so I get my iron to it. See, this one touch the tin lead because there's already solder on these pads. So you just touch the tin lead to it and then gently push down the soldering iron. And then boom, solder flows. Oops, I waited. Not enough. Now lift it up a little bit. So let's grab that again. Put it back down. That's better. This isn't too hard to get into, but if you have a really small speaker, you know, you might actually go ahead and rewire it. Which I probably should have done with this one. Can't get the solder to flow there. There we go. That's it. So now what you want to do is get these wires out of the enclosure somehow, like through here or through this side. It depends. Now in this case, I know from before, I'm mounting it this way, right? So it's got to, oops, turn it around. It's got to go in the locomotive like this. So that means my speaker wires have to come out this side because there's a hole in the tender floor I can go right through into underneath. So they can come right out by the solder joint there. So what I'll do is take my handy little nipper here. This is my bad one. I use this for like styrene work and stuff like that. I just take a little one like that and pop a little notch out. Just a little notch like that. And that way when I seal this up against the weight here, the wires will come out like this. And turn the iron off. Okay. Caulk gun. I need to get like a little tube of caulk. Never thought of doing that, but I just put a little tiny smudge like that there that I can work with. Go away, you little bugger. What I'll do now is I'll just take this and I'll put a little caulk in the gap there. You can see what I'm doing here. And I just try to spread the caulk along the edges here. Got a moth in here, driving me back crazy. See, this doesn't take a whole lot to get this in there. You just got to get enough to build up a little bead, and you press it in place. I think that should do it. Now let's take this puppy and right in our weight there. And if there's any spots that show like gaps, you know, you can go back in and fill it. This stuff takes a few minutes to dry though. Like I see a little gap along the end here, so I'll just right on the end here, so I'll put some extra caulk in there to hold it. Because you never get this weight like this perfectly flat, so you always put a little bit extra in here just to hold it, you know. And get in and seal up that wire hole. Make sure your wires are going in it. There we go. Okay. Now we can let that sit and dry. And what do is get down inside here and fill that little gap with some. Because we'll get in here and paint this whole thing black so you won't see a thing when we're done.
Barry, can you bring the hand forward just a bit?
Yeah, there you go,
Thank
Jaden.
you. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
I'm just putting a little bit of caulk up in there to seal that gap. Sometimes it's a little hard to get in there. There, that should be good. Like I said, when this is done, I'll go in there with some flat black paint and touch it up. Keep getting a little void there. Got a little spot. There we go. Now it's covered up, I believe. Yep, there's a couple of little spots there still. There we go. Now it's sealed. Alright, so we just gotta let that sit and dry. And there we have it, gentlemen. One speaker enclosure. Once this is done drying, then we can go ahead and sand any little edges around where it has to you know, fit around the corners here, and then it's ready to install. So I think everything went pretty good. I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, does that give you an idea what it takes to build an enclosure and proper methods of mounting speakers and everything?
Yeah, pretty good example.
Yeah, this one was a rather challenging install because of the small area to put it in.
And that's an HO scale, Barry?
Yes. There's a little bit of a gap between here and the floor of the coal bunker that lets the sound come out the front here. So literally this was a solid wall along the front here where I cut this opening. But once you paint it black, it's buried back inside the cab. You can't tell. You can't even see it. And like I said, under the tender here, there's a hole in the frame, so I just draw a hole through the tender, drop these two wires down, and I solder them. You know, I use a lot of these here. You know, it takes this is a 6-pin. I use a 6-pin and a 2-pin, you know, for the speaker, and it works great. And these are micro connectors from TCS. They're the smallest ones you can get. They're about not half, about 2/3 the size of a regular mini connector that most everybody else sells. They're kind of expensive, but they're well worth it because once you put this in there, you can never see the wires. They're so tiny. What I did is I cut all the wiring under the floor here, soldered one of these on, just enough to go up inside of here. And then same with the speaker connector, right underneath, soldered on the speaker connector. Then inside of here, I soldered the female part to the decoder wiring, and then I just fished this up to the hole for the factory connectors. which were on the circuit board I removed, and then plug them in, away she goes. The only other thing I had to do was I think I added a resistor for the headlight, and the backup light, they had a bulb on the board. So what I did is, since I removed the board, it's a light pipe going up inside the lamp. So I put a dab of Aleene's clear tacky glue and then just taped down a surface mount LED till it dried. And then I wired that to the reverse light circuit in the tender, and it worked great. So
What brand model is that?
that's a Bachmann Spectrum. It's a real nice model.
Was that the Shay?
Yeah. The other one I did for Dick, what I did to mimic a Shay, because TCS doesn't have the Shay sounds in the decoder yet, I went and sped up the chuff, so basically it's 6 chuffs a revolution. I kept the volume low because that much noise tended to want to overdrive a little bit. And then I was demoing it with Mike when I was working on it, and Mike suggested I turn on articulation. Well, articulation did the real trick, because it made it give this real staccato beat, because it was, when you're going at speed, it was chuff, 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 but it got a nice snap to it because of the articulation being turned on. So it worked out pretty good. And then what I did is I went into the decoder and set the speed table. I went and set it. It took the normal curve that it had. I went to the last speed step, which is at 255, and slid it down to about 160, and then told it to give it a log curve, so it gave it a nice smooth curve down. And then what that did is it limited its top speed to about 50% of throttle. Mm-hmm. And this thing could be hauling logs up a grade, going nice and slow, and sit there, because it's really working hard, because I got the speed table adjusted down, and it produced a really nice sound. Now this summer,
that put 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 down with it as the smoke comes out the chimney.
Yeah, well, the Shays, I mean, have a very staccato beat to them. I mean, it's hard to tell, get that the puff puff sound and the chuff sound actually out of the stack, because we don't have the right recordings. So what I did, made it closer to that staccato beat that you hear from a Shay because of the mechanism and all the 3 cylinders. But this summer, TCS has got a project going on. They need to get the sounds cut for some new locomotives for the steam, and they're going to be putting some of this stuff into the next version of the steam decoder, and it should be out before the end of the summer, if I am correct. I'm not positive on that, but I'll give John another month or 2, and I'll check base with him, because I got this one to do, and I have a climax to do. So the climax has got a brass water tender that I'm going to put all the electronics in, including the speaker. I just got to find out how to tear the tender apart so I can get in there and, you know, drill holes in the underside to let the sound out. So, and that's the thing. There's a couple different methods you can use for steam engines. A lot of times a steam engine comes with holes already drilled in the base, and then you just basically caulk your speaker down, and the tender becomes your enclosure. What people have done too is, under the coal bunker, you put, you put, like, say under here, if it's bigger, you would put a styrene sheet, and your electronics go underneath it, and you mount your speaker face up, so the magnet's down in the tender. And then what you do is you take like a piece of, you can use styrene, you can use even foam. What I did in one of our locomotives, the club, we used a piece of foam, and then just covered it with glue, and then put the coal on it. But if you have like a natural slope, like if you wanted a coal, you put a sheet of styrene in there. Then when you're done, you take like a number 71 or 72 drill bit and drill through the coal like 100 times. And those little micro holes will let the sound out. I've seen it done, and it sounds pretty good that way. So This is going to take at least a half hour for it to dry before I can really handle it well.
And you're going to paint that black and then stick it in
Yeah,
there?
I'll take it in half. And before, when I did the last one, after I got done cutting the weight all to hell, I spray painted it flat black and everything, and then I glued the enclosure in. But I didn't have time for the paint to dry. I literally cut this thing tonight. When I did the first one, I tried using a Dremel. It took forever. So I went to Lowe's and come here, you bugger. This trusty dusty hacksaw, right? 18 tooth per inch blade, nice and coarse. I had this thing done in like 45 minutes tonight. So it works. You know, that's easy. You could use that for cutting like locomotive frames. Like I said, it's a coarse 18 tooth per inch blade, and it worked out really well.
And that's for cutting that frame that where your enclosure is mounted on.
Yeah. Now that one there, obviously, is the just the weight. I see, like this one here, if I had to, in this area, I could tear this frame apart as a split frame and cut a notch down in here and build an enclosure. The speaker would sit in this area, say. Or I could notch it for the decoder to sit in there, notch the keep alive here, and put a small round speaker like here that would shoot up through a grill. And the problem is this kind of frame, there's no way to shoot sound down. So, but see these holes in the top of the frame here? You could take this frame apart and mill them out, or because there's the slots here hold the truck. So you can't go too deep, but you can widen the hole out so you can put a speaker firing down and around that truck mount so it could get some sound out. So, but this is
routed out a bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can do it. But these are the more difficult ones because I have room to cut this back some and put a small speaker in here, or maybe up in the front. You don't really want to do it, but like, I mean, I could cut this down enough so it would clear the flywheel and recess the decoder here, and then maybe put the keep alive up in here, and then mount and recess the frame here for a speaker. There's a lot of tricks you can do with it. But these are nice because there's like 3 screws and the frame comes right apart and the whole thing falls apart in your hand. And then you could go at it with a milling machine or a Dremel, or like I said with my trusty dusty hacksaw there. So let's see, this goes on GP30 body. So I have room up in here to put the decoder and keep alive. And I probably end up replacing these grills with something to let the sound get out, or replace these fans with see-through fans so I can get the sound out of the shell. I gotta patch paint it though. I might just repaint all the green on it so it matches, but it's a cheapy little Bachmann Spectrum unit I got for next to nothing, so I can't argue with it, It's a fun little toy.
Hey, Barrett.
Yes, Bill.
We're trying to say with the speaker enclosures, the larger the area you have to put a speaker in, the louder and more resounding sound you'll have out of it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You always want to strive for the biggest speaker you can put in, or if you can't do that and you can put multiple speakers in different locations, that helps too. It's all about, like Bill said, the size of the enclosure behind the speaker and the surface area of the speaker. So this is a 14 by 25 millimeter speaker. A 16 by 37 is a fair bit bigger, and they make it bigger than that, and then like I said, the 1 inch diameter, well, they're 1.1 to 28 millimeters that some people sell. Those things are great because they got plenty of cone air. Like the MTH SD70 Aces have 2 1.1 inch enclosures in the fuel tank. Those things rock when you put speakers in them.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. Even if you have to use a smaller speaker, if you have a larger area to put it in, that larger area acts as a resounding box.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Now, some of the high bass speakers you can get, like Railmaster Hobbies has them, they
Hmm.
actually have ported enclosures where there's a path through the enclosure with a hole in the enclosure to let some of the sound out. What exactly is a port in the speaker enclosure for, Bill? Because you probably would know.
It's to actually let the air out so you don't have the back compression on your speaker.
Okay, they usually tune those holes and paths to the size to help keep the sound from contaminating the front sound, right?
Yeah, if you take us like these kids build these boxes for speakers in the back of their cars,
Right.
and they don't port them, then they wonder why their speaker cones are shredding on them.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
because you have uh, all the back pressure of the back side of the speaker trying to make it back into that closed, sealed container.
Right.
And it's just going to shred the speaker.
Well, yeah, the magnet's much stronger than a cone at that point, right?
Yeah. So you
Yeah.
need to have your speaker enclosures ported to allow the inner part of the box to breathe.
Yeah. Now, in this case, for small things like this, that's not as big of an issue. I mean, this thing.
No, it's not. But you will get your sound off the back of the speaker the same as you would off the front.
Yeah, yeah,
So you need to have it ported enough to allow that sound out.
yeah. Now, see, like this unit here has see-through grills, like right there. So I'll put a speaker right up under there. So the front side goes out the top, the back side goes out the bottom around the trucks, and therefore, it helps prevent that compression Bill's talking about. I just got to figure out how to wire this thing. It's got its Genesis board in there that I don't like. I want to get rid of it. No factory electronics.
Mhm.
Hardwired them puppies. There's all kinds of little tips and tricks like that. Also, if you get a chance, go on to YouTube, check out a guy named Laurie McLean. He's an MMR from Australia. He's the one of the AP coordinators down there, and I think he lives in Oz. Um, Fantastic videos on speakers and speaker enclosures, and he uses like all the different methods he's tested because he's worked in O and also HO. So Reggie, when he started out, he was using like big, giant, double bass, high bass speakers and twin speaker isobaric configurations, and he explains it all. And he does a very good job. And another video to check out. It's Bruce Petreka, the guy who used to own Litchfield Station. He's known now as Mr. DCC. Um, he has a video called "Getting the Sound Out," which goes along with an article in Model Railroad Hobbyist, and it really talks in depth about what we've been discussing here, how to prevent the sound contamination from front to back, etc. So it's definitely worth a check out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to post a link to his Getting the Sound Out video and to Laurie's YouTube channel in the notes after the video post later, so that way you guys can come back and check out the links. But I've known Laurie for a few years, and we got kind of get friendly chatting, watching his videos and stuff and commenting, and he seems like a great guy. And if you love animation, he's your man. I mean, I'd love to have him do a whole section on here on animation. I don't know if he'd be interested or not, but he has this whole section of his layout called Saddlesaw Gulch, and he has like the Saddlesaw Saloon with dancing girls. He has horses doing stuff. He started out in O gauge with a conductor swinging an LED lantern on his arm. Now he does that in HO. He has done steam engines where the bell moves in time to the sound with a micro gear motor. And he's friends with Dave, the tech at TCS, so Dave has done one too. And they've had a minor competition going on who can come up with the weirdest DCC configuration. So Dave has one. He had a steam engine pulling it, a train, and had all the marker lights lit up. The bell worked in time to the sound. Inside the box car, it was the box car was called Scotty's Potty's Papers, Scotty's potty paper, and they had a Gandy dancer he got from a Bachman Gandy dancer. He hooked it inside with a gear motor, spinning a cow over a spit, and he had a firebox flicker in the fire pit, and he put a smoke generator with beef flavored smoke in it inside the boxcar, and then he had a little like a two-axle trailer truck on the back with a outhouse on it with brake lights, turn signals, the whole 9 yards. I mean, so I mean,
He's
crazy guy.
he's
Yeah,
the guru of animation.
yes, he is. He really is. And Dave's trying to keep up with him as best he can. His first effort was very valiant. I'll have to give him that. He really put a lot into that. And if you like animations, there's another guy is on MRH, Dr. Jeffrey Buns or something like that.
Yeah.
He does a blog series called SMA, Small Model Animation, and he's done a lot of neat stuff. And some of it wasn't even really animation. Like his first one was he had a plane looked like a Murphy Moose sitting at a dock, and you'd have the guy stand there like he was spinning the propeller to start it, and he actually had the propeller like and would spin a little bit and stop, and then speed up and slow until it got going. And then he did another one. It was the coolest thing. He had a little scene with crossing gate lights. The arms came down, lights went on, train came by, but in the foreground he had a bunch of bushes. What he did is on the underside of the leaves, he put little dots of glow-in-the-dark paint. And then he put a brass tube up from under the layout just to the top of the soil so it would focus the light from below onto the little dots of glow-in-the-dark paint. And then he put an ultraviolet LED in the other end of the tube under the layout. And he basically had a little flicker circuit that turned them on and off, and it made them look like fireflies in the bushes. So there's a lot of neat little things like that you can do with tech stuff, and we'll eventually explore some stuff like that with me and Mike as well. Get some people on here that have done it. Like I would love to have Lori on here to talk about some of the stuff he does, and other people. So we'll see.
If you can dream it, you can do it.
Exactly. I mean that guy Jeff Buns, he had a thing where he took what was it? I think it was an Arduino, a little mini one, and found the libraries and wrote the software to make a $5 17-function DCC decoder. So you could use it to drive servos, LEDs, whatever. It wasn't meant to be a motor decoder, but it was like a 17-function decoder. So you could put that on your layout and use it to operate building lights, animations, whatever have you, and it costs $5. So, I mean, you can't argue with that.
I actually think that was a pickboard.
No, you might be right. I don't remember off the top of my head, Bill, but it could have been a pickboard.
Yeah, because Arduino, you can only get 12 maximum functions.
Yeah, it might have been a pick processor.
Yeah,
I would want to mess around with them. I have a couple of pickaxe chips. I took a class on pickaxe at a clinic one time, and you can do some neat stuff with it,
I do all my signaling with a pickaxe.
Yeah, I mean, actually, most decoders use pick chips.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you go to if you're into sci-fi modeling stuff, you go to places that sell antenna controls and voodoo lighting and stuff like that, where they sell these effects boards, flashers, and all this stuff. They're just pick chips, It's just a matter of writing the programming. I mean, I can go to antenna controls and buy a board that strictly has an output to do a single flash navigation strobe, like a white strobe, and an alternating red and green with double flash, and it's going to charge you $200 for it. I could build the thing for $10 in parts.
Not even.
Not even, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, a lot of that stuff is very handy for use in model railroading, because you can use a lot of that to light buildings and do effects and stuff. And if you get like a pickaxe, which has limited functions, but it uses basic programming. You don't even need to use, like, if you go into a full pick, a lot of times they use like C++ or something much more robust, but more complicated programming.
Yeah, the big pick is in DOS. Pickaxe is actually a written program. They're not using DOS.
Yeah, it's some form of the basic language that you program it in, but it's
Yeah.
not anything to do with DOS.
Nope.
Literally, you're using like an audio cable that is connected to a USB jack to upload it, the code to it from your computer. It's
The,
as simple as dirt to do.
the pickaxe setup board USB is $17.
Hmm.
You can buy the whole kit for $79 from Mauser or most electronic places.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's another
You can,
place, Sparkphone or something like that has a lot of interesting things like that too as
yeah.
well.
You have one chip already on the board, and you write the program. It sends it to that chip. You stick another chip into the empty socket and hit the program button. It'll program that chip. Pull that chip out and put it into your project board and whatever you're building.
Yep.
And I've duplicated about 40 chips for the signals.
Nice. Yeah, that's probably what I'm thinking of doing. Is Mike found some schematics and programming code for doing a signaling system with PIC. So
Yeah, I've
what
got all
I
that.
experiment with that. So because it would make more sense because you could do it a lot cheaper than buying commercial signaling systems. You know, the only thing is you still have to work with block detection, but I mean, that's no big deal. Block detectors are pretty cheap.
If
You
you
know.
take the signaling out of the DCC system, run it under 5-volt DC, you can do a whole lot of signaling for a whole little bit of money.
Oh yeah, I mean, I just wish Atlas had continued with their signaling system they were working on, because literally the signal mounted on your layout, and you plugged into a board with a telephone cable, and then you daisy chain the boards from signal to signal.
Right.
It's just a normal, typical three-aspect signaling system, and it's literally plug it and play, you know. And but it's still advertised, but you can't find it anywhere except for maybe on eBay. So, and they had the company that was making the signals that had the RJ11 on them went out of business or stopped making those signals. But it's just LED connections to an RJ11 connection. So you just got to find what the pinout is. You can, make your own adapter board, or wire it to a socket, or change the type of plug you use. I mean, I could design a board that could do the same thing, but maybe I will. you know.
Yeah, I've already got boards made up. The thing is, all you need to run it through your pickaxe chips is a switch, be it infrared, isolated rail joint, whatever.
Yeah.
Just
I
something
mean,
to signal.
like something like a current detector type, like a NCBD20 or something like that.
You could use that, but the only thing with that, you need to get your track voltage through it to get the resistance enough to throw the
Yeah,
switch.
yeah, that's a typical detection coil type.
Right. Now, if you use a infrared in the track, 2 units side by
I
side,
need to get in
Right.
here.
that will be reflective.
Okay.
That'll throw the switch. You could use a isolated small piece of rail.
Right.
Cut your gaps in the rail and use it as a switch.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so that might be interesting. You could do strictly signaling. What the heck? Who is that? Is that Phil making all that noise? Yeah, that would be a perfect little system to have. Like you said, the only thing is it doesn't have feedback to your DCC system for panel displays, but I mean, there may be something as an offshoot of what Jeff did with his little function decoder that you could use for that, you know. So
There's a pin left over on the pickaxe that
okay,
you could use to run a wire from that to a panel light.
okay, yeah. But the thing is, there, if that just gives you say 5 volts out or 12 volts or whatever,
5 volt.
use that as an input to a circuit that would talk back to JMRI, say.
Exactly.
You know, and then you could design a little multi-board that would take in so many signals to each board, just like they sell. You know, just make it compatible with your system. You know, that way it would be a full DCC. It wouldn't be a DCC controlled system, but it would report back to a DCC system that you could use for, you know, on screen signaling or something like that. Like you said too, it's got an extra pin. You light an LED on a physical control panel on there. I mean, that's the skinny simple of it, you know.
Exactly. I've got to send in my engine anyway to get a decoder put in it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll
So,
send you the schematics for this.
oh, okay, that'd be appreciated, Bill.
Mhm.
Yeah, just like I said, you know, I sent you my address, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You just throw it in there with a money order, and I'll order the parts, and we'll get her installed for you. You know,
Okay.
'cause that should work very nicely. 'Cause, I could use it. I don't know if they make any smaller ovals than this one, but there's these little half-inch. There's another one-inch speaker, but there's also little half-inch speakers too that we could use in the back of the tender. So you know, it's very possible. Like that one, you know, that's like a half-inch diameter. So
It has to be smaller than a dime.
okay, that's gonna well. That
Use this small
right
square
there,
sugar.
right there, that little puppy, right there. Just got to remember to turn the volume down or use 2 of these in series, so
Mm-hmm.
that way it cuts some wattage down going through the speaker. So I had that in a little enclosure like that I just mounted it because it's got a little plastic frame around it. So I just had it. I had it glued from the inside because there's a plastic frame in face. It was just it was just in there like that, and like that.
Yeah.
That worked out pretty good, you know. So, like I said, these are lower power speakers, so I didn't realize that. Otherwise, but like in a normal ones, I could have put 2 of these in, but I don't have room in the shade to do that. Well, maybe not. Huh? 2 side by side. Aha! Aha! Something to experiment with on the next one. I picked these are Nokia cell phone speakers, right? I picked these
Yeah.
up off of eBay. 10 for $10 with free shipping. So they were this soundtrack speaker cost me $10.26 today at Yankee Dabbler. So these are a lot cheaper. If I can make these puppies work, I'll be much happier because I'll be saving myself a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I figure every 10 installations I do, there's a decoder, you know?
But does it say how many ohms it is and so forth?
Well, they're 8 ohms. They're 8
8 ohms.
ohms, but they're only half watt. Even some of the ones that Streamline Backshop and TBW Miniature Cell are half watt. So that's what I mean. You gotta make sure you pay attention to the besides the ohms, how many watts your speakers are, because almost every DCC sound decoder is a 1 watt amplifier. So either you have to keep your volume down, or
Add
use
speakers.
multiple speakers in series. So
Well, you can still do the 2 in parallel and 2 in series, right?
yeah, you could do that because I mean, like a hood unit, these things here are, you know, small enough to go crosswise. Like you could fit four of these. See how small it is there? You can fit four of these along the top of a locomotive like that and do a series parallel circuit to get 8 ohms. And then you have plenty of surface area for the transducer to spit out sound. So
you could even spread them enough in the distance so you get a more realistic sound for each of the generators in the engine.
Well, see, the thing is, you can't isolate the sound like that. I mean, the only decoder that can do something similar to that is QSI Titan. It has stereo, so you can send separate signals to separate speakers. I just don't know how granular you can get with the sound control, whether can you do individual sounds from one channel to the other or what. Because when they announced that thing like 4 or 5 years ago, and it's still pretty much vaporware as far as I'm concerned.
But
because
the placement of, if you're doing parallel serial, you know, sort of a quad set to get to the 8 ohms with these Nokia speakers.
Yeah.
How far apart would you place them? Will they be right next to each other, or do they, you know?
Well, I mean, the ones I have, the double set I have from Streamline Backshop Service, they're right next to each other. They have a common enclosure because they're designed to be wired in series so they fire together. As long as these are designed so the cones move in the same direction, so your polarity is all the same, you can put them right next to each other and use the same backside enclosure. You can put them in one big long enclosure and just go 4 in a row because they're moving in unison. If their polarity is reversed, they're going to fight each other.
Right, but I'm thinking about spatially, how far apart could you put them in a shell?
Well, I mean,
to give it a little bit more broader sound.
You could put like 2 in the rear and 2 in the front.
Yeah.
And just put them in 2 separate enclosures. As long as they're far enough apart, the sound won't contaminate each other.
Yeah.
They're still arriving out of phase, you know.
Right, or you could, you know, do one on the face, one on the left face, one on the right grill.
Yeah, exactly.
That way.
Out the side grills. Yeah, you can do that too. Yeah.
And you can build a central sort of enclosure with a back meet in the center, and then you can do
exactly.
the parallels into the parallels and series the two together.
Yeah. Because they would probably fit nice along the grill there.
Well, you have 4 speakers, JD. You need to put the first 2 in series and the second 2 in series, and then parallel them more together.
Yeah, because then you basically have 2 sets of 16 ohm speakers that you wire in parallel to get 8 ohms, and that would work nice because with something that small, I mean, you'll get plenty of surface area to get some good sound out, and that way you'll distribute the power across the speakers evenly, and at 8 ohms you're not adversely impacting the amplifier, so you get the maximum output from your amplifier. Yet, because you have 2 in series and 2 in series, you're not going to overload a half-watt speaker and burn it out or blow it up or make it, at worst, distort, you know.
Well, you know what you do, Barry? You need to try that Nokia thing and write an article for it.
I might have to do that, yeah. Yeah, Bill.
Have you heard, I don't know if it's Streamline Backshop or who it is, but someone is trying to design a plate speaker for model railroading.
Like see, I don't know too much about plate speakers. They're similar to a transducer type, right?
Yeah. That way it'll be as thin as a piece of aluminum foil with 2 wires coming off of it, and you can mount it right up onto the side.
Yeah, you literally would glue it right to the shell of the locomotive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can do, like I said, you can do the same thing with these, and this design makes it hard because you see the contacts stick up there. So that makes it hard to mount it flat. And I don't want to bend them out of the way because I'm afraid they'll break.
Yeah, well, what you have there are actual speakers, though.
No, this is a transducer. It's got a sealed metal can on the back, so it's actually a transducer type speaker.
Oh, okay.
So they actually work pretty good. They sound great, but you got to watch how much wattage you put in because they're only half watt. Now that I've learned that, now I know, you know, wire them in parallel, or 4. They're small enough. I might try 4 because I have the Jeep here that I want to put them in, so I could literally foam tape them across the top, see how it sounds. If I don't like it, I pry them off and put them in an enclosure or something.
250 ohm 1/8 watt resistor will stop a 1 watt amplifier from blowing a quarter or half watt speaker.
250 ohm, half watt, or eighth watt? Okay, I remember that. Write that down. Eighth watt, that's not bad. Okay. I'm going to have to try that. Because I have a locomotive of one of these in it that every now and then overdrives the speaker and makes it sound funky. So maybe I'll just throw a resistor in there and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the preference is always to use multiple speakers if you have, a high wattage amp and low wattage speaker.
Try and find those small little glass resistors. They work the best.
Oh, okay. I didn't know anybody was working on plate speakers for models. That would be great.
Yeah. Someone was experimenting with it.
Forgot all about plate speakers, man. That would be a great thing to do, you know. There we go.
That turns the whole shell into a speaker.
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea behind these little cell phone transducer types. Is if this one didn't have the contacts in its way, I could mount it with some real thin foam tape to the shell, and it helps transmit the sound to the shell without, putting the entire sound to the shell and making the shell vibrate a lot, So you need a little thin foam tape. Like this stuff's, I don't know, 1/16 of an inch. Is kind of thick. I haven't tried it yet, but I think I'll give it a shot. Play with it.
Double-sided masking tape.
Ah, there you go. That's a good idea. Yeah, double-sided masking tape's not a bad thought. This has got a little more resilience, but it's kind of thick, like I said. So I don't know if they make anything thinner, but it's thicker than double-sided. But you could always put like a couple layers of double-sided tape to add a little bit of isolation in there. So it's something to play. That's the one thing. Don't be afraid to experiment. I mean, that's how guys like Bruce Petreka came up with different ideas. That's how Laurie McLean came up with different ideas. Laurie literally has a board that he has like like a dozen different speakers on. And he has the decoder and a motor mounted on a selector switch, and he'll play a sound, switch a speaker, play a sound, switch a speaker, and let you hear the difference. I mean, he's the one that literally, the first time I ever realized that if you just take a speaker and hold it in your hand, open, you can't hardly hear anything. And then what he did is he set it in his fingers so that his part of his hand blocked the back of the speaker from the front, and the volume like tripled.
Mm-hmm.
Start understanding that you got to keep the two sound waves from contaminating each other, even with these transducer types, because the front is a flexible element that makes the sound, but the back also, just like a regular speaker, because it vibrates in tune with that, will emit sound too. So you want to couple that to your shell with some kind of acoustical medium like the tape or something like that to transmit that sound into the shell, and then you don't have to worry about sound contamination.
Barry, in terms of if you were mounting these next to each other, each one is one of these transducers.
Yeah.
You want some sort of a baffle in between too?
No, because as long as if you have the same wire going to the positive terminal in each one, and it's negative, they're working together. It's like, a speaker is in and out, right? Well,
right.
Let's see here. This one's going this way, and this one's doing this. They're fighting each other. You want them to go like this. The only way you want them to go separate is in an isobaric configuration, because you basically face the two speakers together in a sealed enclosure, and this one goes out while this one goes in. So then they're pushing sound out the back side of the speaker, and they're not fighting each other, but they have a bigger enclosure with more air movement because the two speakers are facing each other.
Yeah, bigger enclosure and vented.
Yes, exactly.
Well, for example, like one of my home theater center channels is hematically sealed, in the sense that one's a passive and one's an active driver.
Right.
So it's just connected by a tube in the back, and so if the active one's firing, the suction from the air in that vacuum causes the other one, the passive one, to vibrate, give
Right.
for bass,
Mm-hmm.
and they do it in sync, so automatically because of the vacuum that's created, it's in sync because of that.
Now,
Yeah.
one's wired reverse of the other.
No, it's passive. It's not wired at all. The air suction causes it to move and vibrate.
Oh, okay.
So it's just a cone with no magnet on it then.
Right there, yeah, and it gives you that extra deeper bass because of that vibration.
Aha. Okay. That makes sense.
That's acting like you're having a big giant chamber that the single speaker would be
Yeah,
firing
that's
into.
from Boston Acoustics that I have.
Yeah.
The Mirage ones are opposite firing, so you can choose to fire them in phase, so they fire out together, or out of phase, so they're reverberating back and forth. And you
Wow.
create some very interesting sound effects depending on the type of room you're in.
I'm sure.
And these are pretty large size speakers, so you can
Yeah.
get creative. But it's the same concept I think you're talking about translated down into the engine.
Yeah. Yeah.
You really do have to give thought to, at least what I've learned today is you really got to give thought to how the sound motion is going to occur. You have to give thought to the ohms, the phasing, the wattage, and those things play a good role.
And it's really nothing different that you wouldn't for any kind of speaker installation. I mean, even in an audio system, you got to make sure you're not trying to drive a 50-watt speaker with a 200-watt amplifier.
Yeah.
And you don't want the two speakers facing into each other where they're fighting each other. You want them to face away from each other, or at least straight forward so the sound waves don't contaminate. It's a lot of people have put a lot of thought on forms and stuff into the acoustical design of speakers for models. I mean, the principles still apply, but you're not going to get as dramatic a result as you would in a big speaker system. And things like using isobaric configuration stuff is kind of limited to the larger scales because you kind of need some room
Yeah.
to put them in, because essentially you have to have an enclosure that's between your two speakers, and the cones are facing each other, and then the magnets are out the back. So you can't mount them, side by side like this. They got to face each other. So now you're in a cube, much bigger construction. If you put it like a dummy unit, you could get away with it, and you probably get some incredible bass out of that. But like I said, larger
Yeah,
scale.
the diameter of the speaker times 6, I think it is, the formula to figure out your chamber
Volume.
and then if you have isobaric, you times it by 2. That's the size of the container you need.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're driving two speakers into a common container. Yeah. So it's times 6. So say you had a 1 square inch speaker, you need 6 cubic inches of space behind it, Bill.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about N scale, Barry? Are there any very different considerations for N scale, or the same considerations apply?
It's same but smaller, essentially. You're not going to get the same quality of sound out that you could in HO or larger scales, just because, I mean, you don't have the room for the speakers unless you put a boxcar on the end or a B unit and have that be your speaker. I mean, that's what a lot of people do. Like if you just hook up a boxcar to a locomotive and just run
Dedicated
two
sound
wire.
card.
Yeah, like the sound car. But like even in an N scale engine, even this little speaker is too big to fit in the hood unit. It'll fit in the cowl unit, like an F body or something like that. But I mean, if you had the room in the shell, you could turn it vertically, and mount it with an enclosure, and you'd have to leave space between the one face of the speaker and the shell, and just mount it against the other side of the shell. So these might work, but you have severely limited space in there because every scrap of metal you take off the frame on an N scale really going to cut your pulling power down. I mean, I cut away 50% of this weight, and Dick's locomotive has no problem pulling the small trains he runs. Now, if he was pulling a big log train, up a big grade, he might have a problem. But this engine weighs pretty good even without that weight in there, so that weight's just a little bit extra to help. I mean, it doesn't really weigh that much, but maybe another ounce or two. All that helps, you know. The logging railroads don't tow 100 cars, you know. They're much smaller. He doesn't have any really big grades on his layout, so it works out pretty good for him. Sure looks and sounds pretty damn good when I had it running. We had it up there. We ran it like for 3 or 4 hours the first night we got there, and then it ran Saturday and Sunday for all the open houses without a flaw, so he was really happy with it. But I'll be even happy when we get real Shay sounds that we put in there, because I'm going to probably buy me one of these when the time comes, just because it's a nice engine. Its only flaw is the way they did the sliding jack shafts. You pick it up and they all go, they pop open, and you got to twist it all back together and put it on the track.
Oh, yeah.
It's a pain in the butt, but
Even the Rossi ones are the same way.
yeah, I mean, they can't have fixed jack shafts in there. You have to have the ability for them to slide to go around curves. So it just, the slightest too much of a tilt or turn, they pop right apart. But that's good that you don't want them breaking off the trucks, you know. So. Well, it was a fun evening, guys. I mean, everything went along really pretty good. I was very happy.
Barry, thank you so much, Barry.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you, Barry.
Oh, you're quite welcome, Mark.
Good episode, Barry. But I'd just like to let you, or you know, because you follow.
Yeah. Yeah, I do like following Lauren. I wanted to make sure I mentioned him.
I'm very knowledgeable. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He only lives a couple of hours away, and I've never met him. So I'd like to.
Yeah, if you ever run into him, tell him I said hi. I'm hoping he comes east to the National Narrow Gauge Convention next year. It's going to be in Augusta, Maine, because I'm planning on going. So I'm hoping he shows up. I'd love to meet the guy. What's that?
He gets invited over there, so you know he's pretty good with his animation, and even and his coaling tower and his water tower.
Yeah.
They just blow my brain. That's it. He's amazing.
I know. And he looks older than dirt. I don't know how old he is, but the first time I ever saw him, he was standing like on the other side of his layout, and just from like his neck up, I'm like, jeez, he's old. How's he do that stuff? Because I try. I can't solder an 0402 LED. He makes it look like child's play.
Who's that, Barry?
Guy, the Lauren McLean.
Oh.
Where does he live at, Phil? Is it in Oz?
Yeah, he lives in Queensland. He's about
Queensland.
2 hours up the road from my place.
Okay.
I'm actually going to join his the club. He's in the Australian Model Railways something. It's a national body, and I'm actually going to join it and go up to one of their meetings one day when they occur on a day I have off.
Yeah.
It's about a 4 hour round trip. For 2 hours.
Actually, he's for the NMRA chapter there. He's actually the AP coordinator, I think.
Yeah. AMRI, that's it. Yeah. I suggest you guys, if you don't know who he is.
If you ever get in touch with him, man, you got to try and drag him into some of the hangouts, man, so we can get him to come on board here.
Well, I'll ask him if he's interested. I'll send him an email.
Yeah.
And I'll put a link to one of his videos on the Model Railways site there and YouTube site there. And the guys can go there and have a look at whatever he's got from there on. Just cruise around and have a look.
That'd be great, because I mean, he's a fascinating guy. I mean, especially on something like the tech show here, even the live show, we could have a great night talking to somebody like him, you know.
No worries. I'll actually send him an email if he'd be interested in talking on Google Plus with you guys from America and that.
Oh, absolutely.
I'll probably miss it because I'm going back to work in a week, so yeah.
Yeah. He's funny. I've emailed him back and forth a lot with questions about TCS, because when the Steam came out, me and him were both beta testers on the Steam. I don't know if he was on the diesel or not, but we talked back and forth about that. And he's another staunch supporter of TCS and everything. So, and you see him on the forums all the time when people ask questions. He's more than willing to answer, and help out. So.
Well, I'm just hoping I can be back home tomorrow night for my show.
Where are you at now?
In the hospital with my wife.
Oh, how's your wife? She all right, man?
Yeah, she's doing better now than she was. She had an intestinal problem. She's a cancer survivor.
Yeah, I know you mentioned that before.
Yeah.
We're on the border. The medication I gave you, the contrast to the exam, opens out.
I just saw an interesting.
Could you pass on my feelings towards you? Have you seen okay?
What's that, Phil?
If you see Mike, model man, or in contact with him,
no.
Would you say hello to him?
Yeah, I will if I hear from him. Yeah, I don't know if all you're aware, but he's back in the United States with his son, who's had health issues. So he's kind of out of the loop. I mean, once in a while he communicates with us, but he's focusing on that and getting that out of the way, getting it taken care of.
I just read the post on the site there, and I hope everything's okay with his son, and that he beats that horrible big C.
Yeah. So I'm hoping everything goes good for him too. It's a shame because his son's only 23. So. I saw an interesting post tonight somewhere. These little green micro brushes? Buy them at Hobby Lobby and stuff. When you get done using them, let the stuff on them dry. Take scrape the little tips off. Great for N-scale uncoupling picks. I'm going to try and cut them shorter and try them for HO scale, see how they work for uncoupling picks. Because they're a lot easier to handle than big-ass bamboo skewers, so I'll have to give it a try.
You know how hard they are to buy in Australia?
I use it for...
Go ahead, Bill.
I said I use them for glue sticks.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I use mine for. I buy them with a pack full of Hobby Lobby. I have a plastic red cup full of them that I use. Like, every time I put, super glue on, I use them, or the little, little black micro brushes, the white micro brushes. I buy these, 3 different sizes, and when they get used up, toss them and grab another one.
Yeah, I won't use them on CA. I'll just the liquid weld type. But when the tip gets a little hard, that's when I transfer over, take the tip off, and use it on the CA.
Oh, yeah. Well, I use the little foam-tipped ones, and they work okay for CA. The yellow ones, I use them for flux.
Mm-hmm.
So I use the green ones for CA and the yellow ones for flux. So the yellow ones are bigger. I could use them for CA as well, but no, my luck, I'll set it aside and grab the wrong one. Then I'll be wanting to put glue and something on flux. Well, gentlemen, I think it's time to call it an evening. Thank you all for participating. It's definitely been fun. Hopefully everybody learned a few things here. So, if you ever guys have any technical topic you're interested in seeing, just let us know. We're more than willing to try and work out something and get it up on the air for you. So,
you're welcome, Bill. I mean, Barry.
Okay. Okay. You're my list now. Okay. You didn't laugh all night, Mark. Come on, that's all you do in Hangouts is you laugh at everything. You're funny. That was the first time I heard you laugh tonight. That was pretty good. Well, gentlemen, you all have a good evening, and be sure to always stay tuned to YouTubeModelBuilders.com to check out all of the good stuff going on. We'll be putting more topics up on the schedule soon because I got a few things in the works for our show here, and Gino has more stuff, and so did Troy and Dude, and interesting things coming down with the EMAG coming up real soon with the youth issue, and we're going to be working on some stuff. I reached out to Terry Tatsumi about his locomotive build project to put in the fall issue, so I haven't heard back from him yet, but I'm going to be on his doorstep till I get information from him. So, because I want to participate in the locomotive build, I got a couple of Proto 2000 GP9s that are going to be turned into GP10s. So, for the Winchester and Western Railroad. So, yeah,
I'll send you those schematics.
yeah, just whenever you're ready to send that in, and I'll get it taken care of for you, Bill.
That might be a little bit right now.
No problem, man. Take your time.
Okay.
I got myself a GP10.
Where'd you get the GP10 from?
From a swap.
Really? I've never knew anybody made a model of a GP10.
Never heard of one.
Well, the GP10s were Padishaw shops of Illinois Central initiated a rebuild program of GP9s, 7s, and 18s, I think, and turned them into what they call the GP10. They put on the chop nose. Certain models had like the horsed air filter, the big housing over the top of the locomotive. So that's kind of a dead giveaway if you see that big horsed air filter. Now the nose configuration, sometimes the light and everything, change. Let's see what that is. Oh, there it is in the back there. Yeah, that big filter box back there. Yep, that's a horsed air filter. I wonder if someone made that. I never knew anybody that modeled it. I mean, Intermountain's working on one, but they're saying it's coming out soon. But I've been waiting for that for 3 years too.
Detail Associates sells parts to do conversions.
Yeah, they're hard to come by. I don't even know if they make that piece anymore. I found a few of them on eBay, so I have enough to do the engines I want.
So the guy who I bought this from at the swap meet said he built this out of a Proto 2000.
Yeah, I mean, some people said it depends upon what you're doing. You can use a GP18 as well, but you can't use a factory chop nose because the factory chop nose has a slope to it. The GP10s had a flat nose. I mean, all the Winchester and Western engines down here, if they weren't GP10s, were converted to chop nose GP9s and stuff because they were all done down about 20 minutes from my house, even for the ones they use in Virginia and all their operations down in Virginia area or West Virginia. They sent them all up here to have them all modified. They have a nice facility over there in Bridgeton, New Jersey. Found it by accident one day, so got to take a nice walk around the shops and take some pictures. So I got plenty of modeling information. Because once in a while, there's like two GP10s and an SD9 that show up near my wife's business, and they park them over this industrial area next to the DMV. So I can go park in the DMV lot and walk over and take all the pictures I want. So, well, gentlemen, it's been a good night. It's 12:02, so we're going to shut this operation down. So you have a nice night, and we will catch you later.
You too, Barry.
Thanks, Barry.
All right, guys, take it easy.